The Cincinnati 5th Annual National Day of Racial Healing is sponsored by All In Cincinnati and the UC Center for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation.
Welcome to the 5th Annual Cincinnati National Day of Racial Healing, hosted by All In Cincinnati and the UC Center for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. All means all, a revolution of the soul.
Hello, everyone. My name is Denisha Porter, Executive Director of All In Cincinnati. It is with immense joy and gratitude that I welcome you to Cincinnati's 5th Annual National Day of Racial Healing. Today is a celebration of our collective power to create a culture of legacy, one where love, collaboration, and alignment guide us toward a future where we all have a part to play.
And I'm Will Umphres, the director of the University of Cincinnati's Center for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. At the Center for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, we work to bring people together to affirm our common humanity, to tell each other the truth about our experiences, and to work to transform the future into a more just and equitable one in which the common worth of each individual is better affirmed. We're so excited to have you here for the 5th annual celebration of the National Day of Racial Healing. The National Day of Racial Healing is a nationwide celebration every Tuesday after Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It brings us together to reflect on the past year and the successes we've had, to tell the truth about where we've fallen short, and to recommit ourselves to the transformative process of ongoing racial healing. In the past, here in Cincinnati, we've heard from people such as Dr. Gail Christopher, Heather McGee, Angela Davis, Anna Gifty Opoku Ajuman, Taylor Curtis, and numerous Cincinnati city officials and leaders in this area. We asked a few community members what racial healing means to them.
And here's what they had to say.
So a day of racial healing means to me that in the United States of America, that we're still attempting to create spaces in equity in all systems, fairness in the most of every system, and accountability of all people. Then we will have racial healing. But the day for us to begin to talk about what that looks like, what it feels like, and then what it means for our future is what we should be doing on that particular day. I'm excited about what we're going to do in the city of Cincinnati, but I look forward to the future of one day my children's children's children express that they truly believe that they have racial healing.
So growing up in Iran, I never thought that race is such a divisive, such an important thing in people's life. Living in the United States in the last 10 years, unfortunately, I realized that actually it is. I think the Day of Racial Healing is a very good opportunity for any society to come together and solve these racial issues and racial discriminations.
This year, we are inspired by the powerful All Means All framework introduced by PolicyLink, which challenges us to think beyond inclusion to collective alignment and action. It's about fostering deep connections and ensuring that all is more than a concept. It's a commitment to working together in ways that transform lives and communities. At All In Cincinnati, we are proud to embrace these values as part of our journey toward advancing Hamilton County. We are honored to have with us today Ashleigh Gardere, President of PolicyLink, whose leadership and vision have helped bring All Means All to life. Ashleigh's work reminds us of the power of love, connection, and collaboration to create meaningful and lasting change.
Once upon a time, there was a revolutionary notion of a nation where all are created equal. What should have been a promise for all became a promise for few. A promise that remains unfulfilled. But the unfinished story of our democracy is ours to write. We the people have always believed in more. We the people have always created more. We the people have the power. We are the true founders. The flourishing multiracial democracy that has not yet existed. is ours to create.
Hi, Ashleigh. Thank you so much for joining us. So can you tell me exactly what is the All Means All framework?
I'd love to start by describing PolicyLink's own journey to this consciousness around all. PolicyLink is a national research and action institute working to transform our democracy, economy, and communities so that they truly serve all. For 25 years, PolicyLink, alongside so many other organizations and leaders, has offered our best thinking, inclusive planning processes, smart program innovations, thoughtful policy ideas, all to improve outcomes in our communities. Together, we have delivered over $50 billion in policy wins for people across these United States. And we've also spent the last few years reckoning with the harsh reality that nearly 100 million people, 1/3 of the nation, still struggle to make ends meet. After 25 years drafting, advocating, even winning policies and regulations, we still see individuals and families struggle to meet their basic needs. So we decided to step back and try to understand what's keeping us from delivering better results at scale. Here's what we learned. The ideals of this nation, the promises made in our founding documents, are right and good. Unfortunately, despite the beautifully written promises, the framers built a government and an economy based on a notion of winners and losers. If you're not better than someone else, you are nothing. So folks fight to make sure they never become nothing, even if at the expense of someone else. The framers of our democracy let the principles of scarcity, competition, and rugged individualism rule the day. And so do we. At the end of the day, we've not done much of anything to make real the promise of all. At PolicyLink, we began to see that even in our efforts to make this country work better for everyone, we were falling into the same trap, making ourselves the good guys and creating rivals where they weren't even necessary. We all do it. As a result, we see toxic divisiveness, tribalism, a hopelessness that feels almost impossible to overcome. It's this pain and suffering, our inability to care for each other, that informed PolicyLink's shift in our leadership stance towards the all. That's always been a part of our central definition for equity. Just and fair inclusion into a society where all people can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. What we realized is that we will never see better outcomes for all people if we cannot see the humanity of every person, if we cannot work in service of everyone's thriving. We've been trapped in a matrix of winners and losers for far too long. Our governing structures were never designed for our collective flourishing. The idea that you can win and I can win. You can have a good job and so can I. But can you imagine what this nation can become? What our states and cities can produce, what our communities would look like, what they would feel like if they were designed for our collective flourishing? Can you imagine what's possible for Cincinnatians if we believed and invested in the reality that all people can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential? Well, that's the vision that folks at PolicyLink work towards every day.
And how is love incorporated as a guiding principle?
If we want to build something different, we must become something different. The truth is, we can't govern for all if we can't manifest souls that love all. That is why we challenge ourselves and our partners to sit with this one question. Do I have a soul that can love everyone, see their humanity, and work in service of their thriving? So even as a policy organization, we have finally realized that data, research, policy, and advocacy alone are insufficient to deliver the nation we want. Developing the collective and individual souls that can love all is how we will finally rise up and deliver on the unfulfilled promise of this nation.
How do you envision legacy being a part of the All Means All framework?
When we think about generational legacy in America, we often think of the baby boomers as the most charitable generation in American history. they leaned into a mission to serve needs not being met by government. The preceding generation was considered the greatest generation for their patriotism and contributions to World War II. Well, at PolicyLink, we believe the work of our generation, our legacy, is to extend current notions of patriotism beyond parroting the words of our founding documents, but instead making them real for all Americans. To expand our ambitions beyond charity to freedom and justice and liberty. This means taking ownership of this nation with all of its faults and all of its promise, and advancing the new design, values, and power needed to meaningfully improve the lives of nearly 100 million people living in or near poverty. A future where we've unlocked the promise of our nation by unleashing the promise in us all.
On a personal level, how has this philosophy guided your leadership in tackling systemic inequalities?
Well, first I had to get comfortable with the idea that the framers of this nation's founding documents were not superhuman. They were not celestial beings endowed with supernatural design skills, but instead courageous individuals willing to offer a new vision for a democratic nation built on the power of its people. And if we see them as humans, we can acknowledge their own self-interest and the imperfections in their design work. The truth of their humanity allows me to accept the framers' invitation to continue to perfect this nation. I can be clear-eyed that when the framers penned the words, "We the people," I was not included. But the founding of this nation is ongoing. From Reconstruction to the Civil Rights Movement to marriage equality. In fact, at PolicyLink, our leadership stance is a founder stance. All of us in these United States can be founders of this nation with one condition. When you accept the invitation to be a founder, then you accept the responsibility of governing for all its people. And there's some questions we have to ask ourselves. When I say all, do I mean all? Or am I just using all as a front for my people? Can I work in service of everyone's thriving, even those with a different vision for the nation than mine? As a person not included in the original definition of all, am I willing to live into its ideals, not sacrificing the beauty and brilliance of my identity, but embracing the difference in others? Second, my commitment to the all challenges me to take up a non-rivalrous stance. It expands the universe of potential partners beyond folks that agree with every single thing that I say or I do. It's not enough for me to simply pick a side and parrot what others are saying. These days, I'm opening myself up to the idea of different role, same goal.
Love and collaboration go hand in hand when building equity in the community. Can you share a story where these values were uplifted in the community?
When I think about the power of collective efforts, I often think about when Hurricane Katrina decimated my hometown, New Orleans, in 2005. We endured some dark days. We would casually say the lights were off at City Hall. Well, that created space for the emergence and hardening of non-governmental infrastructure like we'd never seen before. While the lights were out at City Hall, organizers built community power and community institutions that accelerated the delivery of a new healthcare system with community clinics that serve those most in need, a new housing system with strong advocates and developers that prioritize thousands of units of new affordable housing. These efforts ultimately delivered a housing trust fund ballot measure that passed with 75% of the vote during this past November's election. And organizers and government officials who strengthened development agencies by including public housing residents as leaders and decision makers. It was organizers, advocates, public officials, and business leaders that demanded government shrink the size of our jail and restore voting rights for formerly incarcerated folks. We even strengthened the role and power of our local data center, which became an enduring institution that enables and undergirds the civic infrastructure of our city. This is one powerful example that gives me hope, and we can see these examples time and again in communities that suffer from hurricanes to tornadoes to wildfires. but it took a 100-year weather event to catalyze those cross-sector partnerships in New Orleans. Unfortunately, we rarely choose to take up the most transformative work outside of these crises or to sustain these kinds of efforts once the crisis is over.
Thanks, Ashleigh. How do we move partners from individual goals to collective alignment, especially when the stakes feel high?
First, start with who's ready and willing. Everyone is not ready at the same time. Second, take the time to build a shared understanding of the problem and its root causes. It's insufficient now to simply observe that the property values in a specific neighborhood are consistently low, as are reading levels and graduation and employment rates. Partners should establish a shared understanding of the policies and regulations that contributed to those outcomes. The group's collective understanding will likely point the way to the scale of coordinated intervention that's necessary to change these outcomes. A shared understanding might just reveal, for example, that a job training program on its own will be insufficient to address long-standing disparities resulting from inequitable policies and investment decisions. I've had to learn that tough lesson myself. Third, set a shared result that all partners commit to working towards together. Remember, different role, same goal. Then, choose a mix of strategies, some easy wins and some generational problems, to build momentum and collective support. Now be sure to choose at least one strategy that others would never choose because the stakes seem too high. Usually, that's where the most meaningful work lies. Also, experimentation is an essential tool in our toolkit, one that we seem less comfortable with. The truth is, there are no easy answers left to address our biggest challenges. We really do have to get comfortable with experimenting and failing and collective sense-making and problem-solving together. Lastly, perhaps most importantly, don't turn on each other if and when things don't go well, or ironically when they do. We've got to learn to celebrate each other's successes and support each other through our failures.
How does All Means All's focus on personal connection inform PolicyLink's vision at both a systemic and an individual level?
As I observe the pain and suffering being wrought across this nation week after week, year after year, I am convinced that our work to manifest souls that can love all so that we can govern for all really is the right work. Folks are hopeless. They feel abandoned, and as a consequence, we've lost the ability to see each other. So it's no surprise that we see divisiveness in our politics and our economy. But the human spirit needs connection to thrive. We need connection to feel valued. In fact, we can't thrive without connection. And that's true for the nation too. When we look across our communities, we see our local economies stagnate when we don't ensure everyone has what they need. The government's ability to deliver is limited when we do not honor the humanity of every person. I really do believe we've got to reach into others' despair and provide the hope necessary to redesign the nation.
So I'm wondering, how can business and community leaders here in Cincinnati and Hamilton County do a better job of building connections to foster equity?
Like every community, Cincinnati has people working on behalf of particular populations. I want to be clear. When we talk about the all, we're not asking folks to abandon that work. We don't want to lose or sacrifice our identities to have fake unity. Instead, we ought to honor the uniqueness of every person and every community. We should honor and embrace our differences so we can finally get to a flourishing democracy that feels authentic to who we are. We need advocates for Indigenous folks and Black and brown folks and Asian folks, poor white folks and non-gender conforming folks, men, women, and people of faith. And none of that advocacy means that we're working against each other. That is the all. Folks in Hamilton County have an opportunity to find each other. Community leaders in the county working on behalf of target populations can pursue partnerships across identity, race, gender, age, culture, and neighborhood to leverage their work towards better outcomes for all.
A love supreme, boundless and bold. We're at the crossroads of a new nation, where every soul thrives and freedom is real. Bravery means nurturing each other, forging a love that sees beyond our flaws, beyond our past. Linked by love, not hatred. We have the power to change, to create a future where we all prosper. Equity is our collective becoming. So, do you have the courage to love? Join us in building a nation founded on love.
In the PolicyLink video, you highlight the power of love to drive change. How do you embed the power of love into your leadership and your decision-making processes, and how can others do the same?
The short answer, prioritize people's well-being and their thriving. So far, we've been talking about public-facing work. I love this question because it allows us to look within our organizations. So here's the deal. Organizations that take care of their people are more likely to become enduring and impactful institutions. At PolicyLink, we demonstrate love in 3 important ways. Accountability to our staff, accountability to the 100 million economically insecure people in this country, and accountability to our partners. With staff, we aim to manifest love with our internal operations in how we set goals, how we build teams, how we treat our employees. Birthing a nation that loves all is tough stuff. It requires us to move away from a norm of being stretched thin and burned out. We need folks to stay in the work, retaining their wisdom and their humanity. At PolicyLink, this includes periodic reset weeks when the entire staff can rest, reset, and restore. It also includes unlimited paid time off, paying 100% of staff medical insurance benefits, and matching 401k contributions as wealth-building opportunities for our employees. And while still a work in progress, we're beginning to normalize staff participation in the development of internal policies, from contracting protocols to IT solutions. This year, we will create space for staff to codify love and accountability in our operating systems. But I want to be clear, donors play an extremely important role in these practices by appropriately supporting overhead, where much of this kind of support resides. And with the 100 million, unlike many policy organizations, PolicyLink prioritizes the vision and innovation of folks often excluded and overlooked, yet most impacted by injustice. We invest our institutional resources to support folks closest to the ground in solution making. We develop research, support ideation and action of our local partners to address injustice. PolicyLink's housing justice work provides a helpful example. We pair our research with the priorities and insights from housing justice organizers and advocates across the country. Together, we develop model legislation and practical ideas that serve the field. And then, in our partnerships, we reject the notion that competition is inevitable. Instead, we subgrant a significant portion of our budget towards partner organizations. Be it time, talent, or treasure, we know that partnerships are a necessary ingredient for the future that we seek.
So I'm thinking about how, especially now when we may be working with partners who have different priorities or goals, how can we use love to help create common alignment towards what we do share?
Right now, leaders and organizations across the country are rethinking their roles. They're asking themselves and each other, should I defend the fundamentals of democracy, or should I refocus my efforts on renewing it? And folks will have different answers to that question. As it turns out, both are important. I believe we need Engine 1 and Engine 2. Some of us must defend, and some of us must build. But the fact that we're doing different things does not mean we are opposed to each other. We have got to resist the temptation at every turn to turn against each other. We cannot be fighting with each other, nitpicking and one-upping each other. Remember, different role, same goal.
Building a legacy requires both vision and hard work. What gives you hope that we can create a more vibrant community?
Just like the New Orleans experience, we witness connection and care and better outcomes after almost every crisis. In response to COVID, through the American Rescue Plan Act, Congress chose to expand the child tax credit, cutting the number of children in poverty by 40%, but just for 1 year. When the pandemic revealed just how important clean, affordable water is to every family, remember we were advised to wash our hands for 20 seconds? Well, we advocated and won $30 billion for a temporary federal low-income water assistance program to ensure that the 2.2 million people without access to clean water could remain safe and healthy and well. Again, a choice to do the right thing, but only for a little while. Those are choices. So my hope comes from these moments that prove that we know what and how to deliver a nation that loves all. The question is whether we will choose to become a nation that loves and cares for all its people day in and day out, on a stormy Monday or a sunny Tuesday.
How can those of us participating in Cincinnati's National Day of Racial Healing continue the work of amplifying, visioning, connection, and love in a way that inspires change and action across the country?
You know, your question reminds me of growing up in a Baptist church in the South. When the preaching was good, you would run home and tell your friend, "Girl, we had a good time at church today." And then when your friend would ask, "Well, what did the preacher say?" you would answer, something about loving everybody, governing for all, we are founders. The words sound good, but they only matter if we know how to operationalize them. We have to model what governing looks like where we live. We have to show people what policies look like that actually center everyone's thriving. What would a housing policy look like that made sure that everyone has access to safe and affordable housing? What would our local economic development policy be if we want to ensure everyone has a good job? During COVID, our school districts ensured every child had access to a laptop to support their learning. Why didn't we make that happen before the pandemic? So we need folks in Cincinnati, in Hamilton County, to model what it looks like to govern for all. When you do that, then connect your efforts with Columbus and Cleveland and Dayton and Akron. Then connect Ohio's efforts to Pennsylvania and Michigan and North Carolina and Georgia and California. Well, now we're activating a new consciousness. That's a new mindset necessary to demand that our governing institutions deliver for all of us. Rest assured, you can activate a national movement from Cincinnati.
Ashleigh, thank you so much for sharing your time, wisdom, and passion with us today.
And thank you all for joining us for Cincinnati's 5th Annual National Day of Racial Healing.
Thank you for watching the 5th Annual Cincinnati National Day of Racial Healing, hosted by All In Cincinnati and the UC Center for Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. All means all, a revolution of the soul.